Episode number 6.
The Georgia sun beat down mercilessly as Private Elena Reyes completed her 15th lap around the training field. Her lungs burned, legs trembling with each step, but she refused to fall behind. 3 weeks into basic training at Fort Benning, and already she'd learned that showing weakness was worse than any physical pain. "Move your ass, Reyes," Drill Sergeant Mercer bellowed through his megaphone. "My dead grandmother runs faster than you." Elena gritted her teeth and pushed harder, overtaking 2 male recruits who had been mocking her height all morning. At 5'4", she was the smallest recruit in Bravo Company, a fact that made her a constant target. But what she lacked in size, she made up for in determination. When the run finally ended, Elena stood with hands on knees, gulping air while trying not to show her exhaustion. Private Jenkins, a 6'2" former linebacker, collapsed dramatically beside her. "Jesus Christ," he wheezed. "Mercer's trying to kill us." Elena straightened, wiping sweat from her forehead. "That's the point. Can't break in combat if you're already broken in training." Jenkins gave her a curious look. "Where'd you learn that, Reyes? Thought you were some college girl." Before she could answer, Staff Sergeant Davis blew his whistle, signaling the next phase of training. "Weapons familiarization. Form up at the armory in 5 minutes." Elena's heart quickened. This was the moment she'd been waiting for since enlistment. Growing up in rural Colorado with a father who'd served as a Marine Scout sniper, she'd learned to shoot before she could drive. By 16, she could hit targets at distances that impressed even her father's military friends. When college scholarships fell through, the Army had seemed the natural choice, especially with her particular skill set. The armory smelled of gun oil and metal. Recruits lined up as Drill Sergeant Mercer and Staff Sergeant Davis distributed standard-issue M4 carbines. When Elena's turn came, she took a deep breath. "Request permission to train with a marksman rifle, Sergeant," she said, her voice clear despite her nervousness. The silence that followed was deafening. Mercer's face reddened as he stepped closer, towering over her. "What did you just say to me, Private?" Elena swallowed, but held her ground. "I'm qualified with precision rifles, Sergeant. My father was a scout sniper with the Marines. I've been shooting since." "Did I ask for your life story?" Mercer's voice dropped dangerously low. "Or did I hear some fresh out of processing private trying to tell me what weapon she should get?" Snickers rippled through the line of recruits. Elena felt heat rising in her cheeks, but maintained eye contact. "No, Sergeant, I just thought." "You thought?" Mercer's laugh was harsh. "You're not here to think, Reyes. You're here to follow orders." He shoved an M4 into her hands. "Take your standard issue like everyone else. You want special treatment? Join the Girl Scouts." The laughter grew louder. Elena accepted the rifle, her face burning with humiliation. "Yes, Sergeant," she managed, stepping back into line. "Princess Sniper thinks she's special," Jenkins whispered loudly enough for others to hear. The nickname spread instantly, rippling through the ranks with barely suppressed laughter. For the rest of the afternoon, Elena endured weapons drills with mechanical precision, ignoring the whispers and occasional elbow jabs from fellow recruits. When Sergeant Davis demonstrated proper firing stance, she noticed him watching her with narrowed eyes. "Reyes," he called out. "Front and center. Show us how it's done." Elena stepped forward, aware of 40 pairs of eyes on her back. She took position, bringing the rifle up smoothly, her body automatically adjusting to the perfect stance, feet shoulder-width apart, slight forward lean, cheek welded to the stock. Davis circled her, looking for flaws. Finding none, his frown deepened. "Where'd you learn that stance, Private?" "My father taught me, Sergeant." "And who was your father, General Patton?" More laughter. Elena kept her eyes forward. "Master Sergeant James Reyes, 1st Marine Division Scout, Sniper, Sergeant." Davis's eyebrows rose slightly. "Is that so?" He gestured to the training dummy positioned 100 meters downrange. "Well then, Princess Sniper, show us what Daddy taught you." Elena took a slow breath, focusing on the target. The M4 wasn't what she was used to, but the fundamentals remained the same. She exhaled halfway, squeezed the trigger smoothly, and fired 3 rounds in rapid succession. When they checked the target, all 3 rounds had formed a tight grouping directly through the center mass. A murmur of surprise ran through the platoon. Davis's face remained impassive. "Beginner's luck. Back in line, Reyes." That night in the barracks, the mockery intensified. Private Mendoza mimicked Elena's stance with exaggerated movements. "Look at me, I'm Princess Sniper. My daddy was a super-duper Marine. Bet she can't even carry a full combat load," Jenkins added. "What's she gonna do in a real firefight? Ask the enemy to move closer." Elena lay on her bunk, pretending to read the field manual, while their words washed over her. Her father had warned her about this, the inevitable hazing that came with being different, especially as a woman in combat roles. "Let them talk," he'd said. "Words don't kill, bullets do, and you know how to stop those better than most." After lights out, when soft snores filled the barracks, Elena slipped silently from her bunk. She crept outside to the small clearing behind the laundry facility, a blind spot in the base's security cameras that she'd noticed during orientation. There, under the pale moonlight, she practiced. Using a broomstick as a stand-in rifle, she worked through the precision shooting routine her father had drilled into her for years. Breath control 4 seconds in, hold for 4, release for 4. Trigger discipline smooth, consiste pressure. Position adjustments for wind variables. Mental calculation of bullet drop at various distances. "What the hell are you doing, Private?" Elena froze. Sergeant Davis emerged from the shadows, his face half illuminated by moonlight. "Training, Sergeant," she answered, lowering the broomstick. "With a broomstick, at 0100 hours." He shook his head. "You're either the most dedicated recruit I've ever seen, or the craziest. My father always said excellence isn't achieved during scheduled hours, Sergeant." Davis studied her for a long moment. "Your old man was Master Sergeant James Reyes, the ghost of Fallujah." Elena nodded, surprised. "You knew him?" "Knew of him. 43 confirmed kills during the Second Battle of Fallujah. Longest shot was 1,103 meters in variable wind conditions," Elena finished. He had the spotter's notes framed in his office. Davis's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "He passed?" "Afghanistan, 2018, IED, on a routine patrol." Davis was silent for a moment. "That's tough, Reyes, but it doesn't change anything here. You're still a recruit who needs to learn discipline and teamwork before specialization." "I understand, Sergeant." "Do you? Because that stunt you pulled today with the rifle request, that's not how things work. You earn your position in this army. Nobody gets handed anything because of who their daddy was." Elena straightened her shoulders. "I don't want special treatment, Sergeant. I just want the chance to serve where I can be most effective." Davis almost smiled. "Then prove it. Not by showing off or making requests above your pay grade, but by excelling within the parameters you're given." He gestured to the broomstick. "And find a better training prop. You look ridiculous." The next morning, Elena attacked the obstacle course with renewed determination. When Jenkins stumbled on the rope climb, she paused to give him a boost, despite his earlier mockery. During tactical exercises, she demonstrated perfect fire and movement techniques, but also made sure to support her squad's overall objectives rather than seeking individual glory. A week later, during their first live fire exercise, Elena's squad was pinned down by simulated enemy fire. Their objective, a small hill with a flag, seemed impossible to reach, with the instructor's machine guns laying down suppressive fire from concealed positions. "We're screwed," Mendoza muttered as they huddled behind a low berm. "Those guns have every approach covered." Elena studied the terrain, her mind calculating angles and fields of fire. "Not every approach," she said quietly. Jenkins scoffed. "Got a plan, Princess Sniper?" Elena ignored the nickname. "The western approach has a drainage ditch. It's shallow, but if someone provides covering fire from here, a small person could crawl through it undetected." Squad leader Ortiz considered her words. "That's at least 70 meters of crawling under potential fire." "I can do it," Elena said. "I'm the smallest, and I'm fast." Ortiz hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, Reyes, but if you get killed, we're all doing extra PT tonight." Elena removed her helmet and excess gear to maintain a lower profile. On Ortiz's signal, the squad laid down, covering fire, while she slipped over the berm and into the shallow ditch. For the next 15 minutes, she crawled through mud and standing water, keeping her rifle dry above her head. Twice, instructor machine guns swept over her position, but she remained motionless, controlling her breathing just as she had practiced. When she reached the blind spot behind the hill, Elena rose to a crouch and moved silently toward the first machine gun position. The instructor, focused on suppressing her squad, never saw her approach. She tapped him on the shoulder. "Bang," she said quietly. "You're dead, Sergeant." His surprised expression quickly turned to reluctant respect. "Nicely done, Reyes. Position neutralized." With one gun silenced, her squad advanced. Elena circled to the second position, using natural cover and moving only when the gun was firing elsewhere. Again, she approached undetected and eliminated the threat. When her squad finally reached the objective, they were the only team to complete the exercise with 0 simulated casualties. Back at the barracks, something had changed. Jenkins still called her Princess Sniper, but the tone had shifted from mockery to something approaching respect. "How'd you move so quietly?" Mendoza asked as they cleaned their mud-caked gear. "I couldn't even see you once you hit that ditch." Elena shrugged. "My father taught me to hunt before I could drive. Moving undetected is as important as shooting straight." Staff Sergeant Davis watched from across the training yard, his expression thoughtful. That evening, he made a phone call to an old colleague in the sniper school at Fort Benning. The conversation was brief, but a note was made in Elena's file, a small mark that would go unnoticed for months, but would eventually change everything. The Kadar Mountains stretched like jagged teeth against the pale sky, their slopes dotted with scrubby vegetation that provided perfect cover for enemy combatants. Elena's unit had been deployed to this contested region for 6 weeks now, patrolling the narrow mountain passes where 3 American convoys had been ambushed in the past month alone. The morning air bit with unexpected chill as Alpha Squad prepared for their patrol. Elena checked her standard-issue M4 with practiced efficiency, trying to ignore the weight of disappointment that had become her constant companion. Despite proving herself repeatedly during training, she remained relegated to standard infantry duties. "Reyes, you're on rear security today," Staff Sergeant Davis announced during the briefing, not meeting her eyes. "Keep your distance at 30 meters. Maintain visual contact with the main element." Elena nodded, keeping her face neutral despite the familiar sting. Rear security, the military equivalent of being benched. It was the position Davis had assigned her for every patrol since their deployment began. "Specialist Jung, you're our marksman today," Davis continued, handing the squad's designated marksman rifle to the lanky soldier. "We've had reports of enemy sharpshooters in the eastern ridges. Keep your eyes up." Jung nodded, accepting the weapon with obvious pride. He was a good shot. Elena had watched him during qualifications, but his breathing technique was inconsistent, and he rushed his follow-through under pressure. Not that anyone had asked her opinion. As they moved out into the rocky terrain, Private Jenkins fell into step beside Elena. Their relationship had evolved into an uneasy respect since the training exercise, though he still occasionally called her Princess Sniper when officers weren't around. "Davis still has you watching our asses, huh?" he muttered, adjusting his heavy pack. Elena shrugged. "Someone has to. You know why he does it, right?" Jenkins glanced ahead to make sure Davis was out of earshot. "Word is, he requested a combat. Experienced marksman for this deployment and got denied. Having you around with your skills but no official designation, it's like salt in the wound." "I'm just doing my job, Jenkins." "Yeah, but we all know you could be doing more." He hesitated. "Some of us were talking. You saved our asses in that night exercise last month when you spotted those instructors before anyone else. Your eyes are better than Jung's, and we all know it." Elena kept her gaze on the terrain, scanning for disturbances in the dust or unusual patterns in the rocks. "Doesn't matter what we know, matters what the brass decides." The squad moved deeper into the mountain pass, the walls rising steeply on either side. Elena noted with growing unease how exposed their position was. Too many elevated vantage points, too few escape routes. The perfect setting for an ambush. She keyed her radio. Sergeant Davis, requesting permission to adjust position. I'd like to move to higher ground for better visibility. Davis's response was immediate and irritated. Negative, Reyes. Maintain your assigned position. This isn't a democracy. Elena bit back her frustration and continued scanning the ridgelines. Something felt wrong. The birds had gone quiet, and the usual distant sounds of village life had disappeared. She slowed her pace, creating more distance between herself and the main element, giving her a wider field of view. That's when she saw it, a brief glint of metal from a rocky outcropping 800 meters to the east. The sun had caught a rifle scope or barrel, visible for just a fraction of a second before disappearing. "Contact east!" she shouted into her radio. Possible sniper, high position on the ridgeline. Before Davis could respond, the crack of a rifle shot echoed through the canyon. Private Mendoza, walking point, crumpled to the ground with a cry of pain. The squad scattered for cover as more shots rang out, ricocheting off rocks and kicking up dust around them. "Where are they?" Davis shouted over the radio, his voice tight with tension. Elena had already found partial cover behind a large boulder. From her position, she had a better view of the entire situation than the rest of the squad, who were pinned down in a shallow depression 20 meters ahead. "Multiple positions," she reported, scanning methodically. "I count 5 distinct firing points. They've got us bracketed from both ridgelines." "Zhang," Davis called. "Can you get eyes on them?" Specialist Zhang had taken cover with the main group, but his position offered limited visibility. "Negative, Sergeant. I can't see shit from here." Another shot rang out, and a scream told Elena they had another casualty. She made a split-second decision. While the enemy focused their fire on the main element, she used the distraction to sprint to a higher position, scrambling up a steep incline to a narrow ledge that offered better visibility. From her new vantage point, she could clearly see 2 of the enemy positions, snipers nestled among the rocks, almost invisible, except for the occasional muzzle flash. She reported their coordinates with precision, but Zhang couldn't get a clear shot from his position. "We need air support," someone shouted over the radio. "Negative," came the response from base. "No assets available for at least 40 minutes. Elena watched in horror as a third squad member went down. They were being picked off one by one, with no way to effectively return fire. Then she saw Specialist Zhang break cover, attempting to reach a better firing position. The enemy spotted him immediately. "Zhang, get down!" she screamed into her radio, but it was too late. The shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. His rifle, the squad's only marksman weapon, clattered down the rocky slope, coming to rest in a precarious position halfway between the enemy's line of fire and the squad's cover. "Man down! Zhang is hit," Davis reported, his voice strained. "We've lost our marksman rifle." Elena keyed her radio. "I can get to it." "Negative, Reyes. Stay in position." But Elena was already moving, calculating angles and timing. She had noticed the pattern in the enemy fire, a slight pause after each volley as they adjusted positions. During the next lull, she broke from cover, sprinting in a zigzag pattern across the exposed ground. Bullets kicked up dust at her heels as she slid behind a boulder, just meters from where Zhang's rifle lay. She could hear Davis shouting in her earpiece, but the words were lost in the adrenaline rush. When the firing paused again, she lunged forward, grabbing the rifle and dragging herself back to cover in one fluid motion. Zhang lay nearby, clutching his bleeding shoulder. Elena quickly assessed his wound serious but not immediately life-threatening. She applied a pressure bandage from her kit, then turned her attention to the rifle. It was an M110 semi-automatic sniper system, not her preferred weapon, but familiar enough. She checked it quickly for damage, finding it operational despite the fall. "I've secured the marksman rifle," she reported. "Zhang needs evacuation, but he's stable." "God damn it, Reyes." Davis's voice crackled with fury and relief. "What's your position?" I have elevation and visual on multiple enemy positions, she replied, already settling the rifle against her shoulder. I can see 5 distinct firing points using the morning sun as cover. They think they're invisible. There was a moment of silence on the radio. Elena could almost feel Davis weighing his options, follow protocol, or let her use her skills. Captain Rivera, Davis finally said, addressing their company commander, who was monitoring communications from base. Request permission for Private Reyes to engage with the marksman rifle. The captain's response was immediate. Situation report. 3 wounded, including our designated marksman. Enemy has superior position and firepower. Reyes has recovered our marksman rifle and claims visual on enemy positions that the rest of us can't see. Another pause. Elena kept her breathing steady, eyes never leaving the ridgeline where she'd spotted movement. Can she shoot? The captain asked simply. Davis hesitated only briefly. Yes, sir, she can. Then make it count, Reyes, Captain Rivera ordered. You're authorized to engage. Elena didn't waste time acknowledging the order. She crawled to a dangerously exposed outcropping that gave her the angle she needed, settled the rifle against her shoulder, and entered a state of perfect focus, what her father had called the zone. The world narrowed to her breathing, the crosshairs, and the barely visible shape of an enemy, sniper 800 meters away. She inhaled slowly, held it, then released half her breath, and squeezed the trigger with deliberate pressure. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. Through the scope, she watched the target jerk backward and disappear from view. Target down, she reported calmly, already shifting her aim to the next position. Her second shot came 30 seconds later, another hit. The third target, realizing his companions had fallen silent, shifted position, but Elena had already anticipated the move. She adjusted her aim slightly and fired again. Another hit. The remaining 2 enemy snipers began firing wildly, trying to locate her position. One round struck inches from her head, showering her with rock fragments that cut into her cheek. Elena ignored the sting, maintaining her focus. 4th target, eliminated, she reported after her next shot found its mark. 1 remaining. The last enemy sniper was the most skilled, changing positions frequently and using cover effectively. Elena tracked his movements patiently, waiting for the mistake she knew would come. When he finally exposed himself for a fraction of a second, her shot was already on its way. All targets neutralized, she reported, her voice betraying no emotion despite the trembling in her limbs. Area secure for medevac. The radio erupted with chatter as Davis coordinated the evacuation of their wounded. Elena remained in her overwatch position, scanning for any signs of additional threats until the medevac helicopters appeared on the horizon. Only when the wounded were safely loaded did she finally descend from her position, the marksman rifle slung across her back. The remaining squad members watched her approach with expressions ranging from awe to disbelief. Staff Sergeant Davis met her halfway, his face unreadable. You disobeyed a direct order, Private. Yes, Sergeant, she acknowledged, standing at attention despite her exhaustion. Davis studied her for a long moment, taking in the blood trickling from the cuts on her cheek, the calm professionalism in her stance. The battalion commander is already requesting the combat footage. 5 confirmed kills at extreme range, under fire, with a weapon you weren't trained on. I was trained, Sergeant, just not by the army. For the first time since she'd known him, Davis's face softened into something approaching respect. Your father would be proud, Reyes. The words hit her harder than any physical blow. Elena blinked rapidly, fighting back unexpected tears. Thank you, Sergeant. Don't thank me yet, Davis warned, though his tone had lost its edge. There's still the matter of your insubordination. Report to Captain Rivera when we return to base. As they loaded into the extraction vehicles, Jenkins slid into the seat beside her. So, he said quietly, still think Princess Sniper fits? Elena leaned her head back, suddenly aware of every ache in her body. Call me whatever you want, Jenkins. Just not when I'm trying to sleep. For the first time since their deployment, the nickname wasn't used again. Instead, as word of the ambush spread through the base, soldiers began referring to her simply as Reyes, spoken with a new tone of respect that meant more than any formal recognition. That night, as she cleaned and maintained the marksman rifle she'd been ordered to return to the armory in the morning, Elena thought about her father. "You don't become a sniper for glory," he told her once. "You do it because some people are born with the gift, and that gift saves lives." She hadn't understood then. Now, with the day's events replaying in her mind, she finally did. The 2 weeks following the ambush passed in a blur of debriefings, medical checks, and whispered conversations that stopped whenever Elena entered a room. Captain Rivera had reviewed the combat footage with her, his expression inscrutable as they watched her methodical elimination of 5 enemy positions. At the end, he'd simply said, "Well done, Private," before dismissing her without further comment on her future assignments. The uncertainty was worse than any punishment. Elena cleaned her standard-issue M4 in the armory, trying to ignore the empty rack where the marksman rifle she'd used had been placed under lock and key. Her fingers itched for its familiar weight, the precision and responsibility it represented. "Heard anything yet?" Jenkins asked, dropping onto the bench beside her. Since the ambush, he'd appointed himself as her unofficial ally, deflecting questions from curious soldiers from other units and running interference with the more aggressive reporters who'd gotten wind of the incident. Elena shook her head. Radio silence. "Davis won't even look at me during briefings." "That's because your combat footage got kicked all the way up to division," Jenkins said, lowering his voice. "Word is, some big brass watched it and started asking questions about why you weren't already in sniper school." "Probably just rumors," Elena replied, though her heart quickened. "More likely they're figuring out the most creative way to reprimand me for insubordination." Jenkins snorted. "Yeah, because the army loves punishing soldiers who save their entire squad and neutralize high-value targets." He nudged her shoulder. "Face it, Reyes, you're a legend now. The guys in 3rd Platoon are calling you Ghost because of how you disappeared during that firefight." Elena continued methodically cleaning her rifle, uncomfortable with the attention. Her father had always emphasized that true professionals worked in silence, letting results speak for themselves. Fame was dangerous in their line of work. It made you a target, both on and off the battlefield. "Raise!" Staff Sergeant Davis's voice cut through the armory. "Full gear, parade ground, 15 minutes. Elena looked up, startled. "What's happening, Sergeant?" Davis's face revealed nothing. "General inspection, the whole company, and make sure your uniform is squared away." He hesitated, then added more quietly, "This one matters." 15 minutes later, Elena stood at attention in the front rank of Bravo Company, her uniform meticulously pressed, despite the perpetual dust that coated everything in this forward operating base. The sun beat down mercilessly as they waited, sweat trickling down her back beneath the heavy body armor. Captain Rivera paced before them, unusually tense. General Harlow doesn't make inspection visits to forward operating bases without reason, he'd told them during the hurried briefing. Whatever happens today could affect all our careers. Best behavior, understood. The distinctive thump of helicopter rotors grew louder, and all eyes turned to the landing pad, where a Black Hawk was descending in a swirl of dust. General Marcus Harlow was a near-mythical figure in modern military circles, a former special operations commander with a reputation for brutal honesty and uncompromising standards. His combat record was classified, but rumors spoke of operations that had changed the course of conflicts without ever making the news. Elena watched as the general emerged from the helicopter, his weathered face impassive as he exchanged salutes with Captain Rivera. Unlike many high-ranking officers, Harlow wore a battle-worn uniform with minimal insignia, the mark of a soldier who had earned his authority through action rather than ceremony. The inspection began with excruciating thoroughness. The general moved slowly down each line, occasionally stopping to question a soldier about their equipment or training. His voice never rose above a conversational tone, yet every word carried unmistakable authority. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs as he approached her section. 3 soldiers away, 2, 1. Then he was standing directly in front of her, his steel-gray eyes taking in every detail of her appearance. "Name and rank," he said simply. "Private Elena Reyes, sir." Her voice remained steady despite her racing pulse. Recognition flickered in his eyes. "Private Reyes," he repeated, his voice carrying across the silent formation. "I reviewed the action reports from Sector 7. Elena braced herself, eyes fixed forward, preparing for whatever came next, commendation or criticism. The entire company seemed to hold its breath. "Your spotter confirmed your shots," the general continued. 800 meters in variable wind conditions, with a weapon you hadn't been officially qualified on. "Yes, sir," she acknowledged, uncertain where this was heading. General Harlow turned slightly toward Captain Rivera. "Captain, why wasn't this soldier already designated as a squad marksman?" Rivera cleared his throat. "Sir, Private Reyes hadn't completed the formal marksman qualification course. She was scheduled for evaluation after this deployment." "I see." The general's tone made it clear he found this explanation insufficient. He turned back to Elena. "Private, I understand your father was Master Sergeant James Reyes." The mention of her father caught Elena off guard. "Yes, sir. 1st Marine Division Scout Sniper, the Ghost of Fallujah." Harlow nodded. "I worked with him during Operation Phantom Fury. He saved my recon team when our position was compromised. Took out 4 hostiles before they even knew we were there." A murmur rippled through the formation. Elena struggled to maintain her composure as the general spoke about her father with first-hand knowledge. "He never mentioned that, sir," she managed. "He wouldn't have," Harlow replied with the ghost of a smile. "Your father understood the value of silence." He studied her face for a moment longer. "You have his eyes, the same focus." The general turned to her commanding officer. "This soldier's call sign is Phantom," he announced, his voice carrying across the parade ground. "Issue her a proper rifle." The silence that followed was absolute. Elena stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. In military culture, a call sign bestowed by a superior officer, especially one of General Harlow's stature, was more than a nickname. It was an identity, a recognition of exceptional ability that would follow her throughout her career. From his pocket, the general produced a small box. Opening it, he revealed a silver pin shaped like a ghostly figure, the unofficial emblem of elite marksmen who operated in the shadows. "In 27 years of service," he said as he pinned it to her uniform, "I've given only 7 soldiers the call sign they'll carry throughout their career. Your father was the first." Elena's throat tightened with emotion. "Thank you, sir." General Harlow stepped back and addressed Captain Rivera. "I want this soldier reassigned to marksman duties immediately and get her into the advanced sniper program when this deployment ends." He glanced at Staff Sergeant Davis. "Unless there are objections from her direct superiors." Davis straightened. "No objections, sir. Private Reyes has demonstrated exceptional skill and judgment under fire." "Good." The general surveyed the rest of the company. "Remember this moment. In combat, it's not rank or time in service that matters most. It's the right person, with the right skills, in the right place." He nodded once to Elena. "Carry on, Phantom." The inspection continued, but Elena barely registered the rest of it. Only years of military discipline kept her standing at attention while her mind reeled from what had just occurred. Her father's legacy, her own vindication, and a future path she'd always dreamed of, all crystallized in that single moment. When the formation was finally dismissed, soldiers surrounded her with congratulations and questions. Even those who had once mocked her seemed eager to claim friendship with Phantom. Jenkins pushed through the crowd to reach her. "Holy shit, Reyes, do you know what just happened? General Harlow personally giving you a call sign. That's like getting knighted or something." Elena managed a smile, still processing. "I need some air," she said, extracting herself from the group and heading toward the perimeter fence where she could gather her thoughts. She found a quiet spot overlooking the valley, the mountains rising in the distance, the same mountains where she'd proven herself 2 weeks earlier. The weight of the silver pin on her chest felt both strange and right. "Quite a view," came Staff Sergeant Davis's voice behind her. Elena turned, automatically starting to stand at attention, but Davis waved her back down and settled beside her on the concrete barrier. "At ease, Phantom," he said, testing the call sign. "Suits you better than Princess Sniper, I have to admit." Despite everything, Elena laughed. Not a high bar to clear, Sergeant. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, watching the sun begin its descent behind the mountains. I owe you an apology, Davis finally said. I knew about your skills from the beginning. Your father's reputation alone should have earned you a chance. Then why did you fight it so hard? Davis sighed. Because I served with men who got special treatment based on their family connections, saw them put in positions they weren't ready for. Some of them died because of it, others got good soldiers killed. He looked at her directly. I needed to know you were doing this for the right reasons, not just to follow in your father's footsteps. Elena considered this. And now I know you're a natural. What you did out there, that wasn't just training or genetics, that was instinct and courage. He stood, brushing dust from his uniform. Report to the armory at 0600 tomorrow. Captain Rivera wants you to select your permanent weapon. As Davis walked away, Eleanor called after him. Sergeant, thank you. He paused, looking back. For what? For making me earn it. Davis nodded once, the closest thing to approval she'd ever seen from him, before continuing toward the command center. The next morning, Elena arrived at the armory precisely at 0600. The armorer, Sergeant Willis, greeted her with unusual deference. Morning, Phantom, he said, using her new call sign naturally. Got something special for you. He led her to a locked cabinet at the back of the armory and opened it to reveal a custom MAN 110 SAS rifle, the same model she'd used during the ambush, but this one had been meticulously maintained and fitted with advanced optics. General Harlow had this flown in overnight, Willis explained. Said you'd earned the right to proper equipment. Eleanor lifted the rifle, feeling its perfect balance. As she checked the sight alignment, she noticed something engraved on the stock, a small ghostly figure, and beneath it, a single word, Phantom. It's official, Willis said, handing her the paperwork. This is your assigned weapon now. As Elena signed the forms, Captain Rivera entered the armory. Comfortable with your new rifle, Phantom? Yes, sir, she replied, unable to keep the satisfaction from her voice. Good, because you've got work to do. He handed her a folder. 3 new recruits with marksman potential. General Harlow thinks you should evaluate them before they're sent to formal training. Elena accepted the folder, recognizing the significance of the assignment. Not just a shooter anymore, but a teacher, someone entrusted with identifying and developing the next generation of specialists. I won't let you down, sir. I know you won't. Rivera smiled slightly. Your father would be proud, Reyes, not because you followed in his footsteps, but because you blazed your own trail. As she left the armory with her new rifle, Elena noticed the changed atmosphere. Soldiers who passed nodded with respect. There were no whispers, no mockery, just the quiet acknowledgement of earned status. Jenkins intercepted her near the barracks. So it's official? You're our designated marksman now? Elena nodded. Looks that way. About damn time, he grinned. Just remember us little people when you're off winning medals and getting famous. Not looking for fame, Jenkins. No, he agreed more seriously. That's probably why you deserve it. As they walked toward the mess hall, Elena felt a sense of rightness settle over her. The path ahead would be challenging, advanced training, greater responsibilities, higher expectations, but for the first time since enlisting, she knew with certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. The rifle in her hands wasn't just a weapon, it was a recognition of her true calling. And the name Phantom wasn't just a call sign, it was a connection to her father and a promise to those who would serve alongside her that when they needed her most, she would be there, watching over them from the shadows, just as her father had done for his comrades so many years ago.